So it gives me a great pleasure to have a very wonderful filmmaker with us. His film, Demonte Colony 2, has been one of the highest grossing films, Tamil films of this year, and the sequel has completely gone notches higher than the first one. So Ajay, thank you so much for joining me on filmishilmy.com and congratulations on Demonte Colony 2's massive success.
My pleasure joining you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Well, look, I mean, Ajay, I think I wanna know about the concept. I mean, it definitely seems like a massive upscale from the first one. And I think the way you've weaved the characters from the first film to the second one, I think was very, very well nuanced. So talk to me a bit about the process of the film and did the success of the first one, because it was quite a sleeper hit, right? The first one. So did that sort of did you have any expectations as well for the second one?
No, not really. We didn't have a plan of doing a sequel when we actually did the first part. So post the success of the first installment, we had a few discussions about making it into a franchise and developing the story further. But then since the no in the first in the climax of the first part, all the main characters had died. We didn't know how to take the story forward. So it took a lot of time for us to create another story world to combine to bring the characters from the first part into the second, and now we've actually written stories for the next two installments as well. So
Oh,
yeah.
that's pretty amazing. I mean, I know Demonte Colony is also kind of inspired by I think isn't it inspired by a true colony that exists in Chennai, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, there is a colony that goes by that name, but the story is fiction. What we've done is fiction completely.
Hmm. So what inspired this actually? I would love to know because it's interesting because in Hindi we had Stree 2, which
Mhm.
again really completely took the box office by storm. And I think it's wonderful because it also brought to life the traditional folklore and the cultural folklore as well. So what inspired this and the context of Demonte Colony?
See, basically, once I saw Conjuring, I had the idea of creating something that has a connect, that has a real connect. Because Conjuring success, its opening was because it was based on a true story, and since it's horror and a true story, the curiosity was so high for the audience that it had a huge opening. So we thought, why not try something on those lines? And there's this place called Demonte Colony in Chennai. It is rumored to be a very spooky, haunted place, and people go there, to just have play pranks on their friends. So we thought, let's build a story based on that place, and that place had a history, so we could actually work on that history as well. So for the first part itself, it wasn't a huge film, but it had a decent opening because people are very curious and wanted to know what these guys have actually built around the Monte Colony. So that was the plan going into this.
Hmm. I think it's a very interesting sort of take on India's colonized history, as well. It's a very interesting take on that. But I think what really stuck with me, about the Monte Colony too is the spirituality that you've included, in that. You've obviously there's been references to Christianity, there's been references to Buddhism, there's been references to Hinduism as well in that. And obviously the whole crux of good overcoming evil.
Mm.
For you, in terms of finding that right tone of spirituality in the film, how important was that, and what inspired that in particular?
See, in all our horror films, there's going to be some positive force because there's a negative force. You're fighting a negative force. So we apply this to a certain religious practice, and we've seen a lot of these Hinduism rituals in a lot of films. So what we thought is, let's project it, show it in a different way. Why not?
Yeah.
No, sh- show something that people have not seen before. And then we got into researching the Buddhism rituals, like how these monks actually perform exorcism. How does their exorcism look like? And it kind of looked very different, and it looked very new to us. So we thought, okay, let's bring in this color into the film so that people get to see how a Buddhist ritual looks like and how these monks perform rituals. And yeah, that's how we cracked this.
Hmm. And I think and I'm glad you said that as well, because I feel like we've never really seen that. I think in any horror film where we've got like a Buddhist rituals happening, to really help, fight the demonic and sinister forces. And I really enjoyed seeing that aspect. And I'm glad the way you really respected that as well, because it could have been very easily, I feel especially when it comes to projecting certain things, so that if the tone is not right, it can kind of, not come across very well, but I think the way you handled it was very beautiful.
No, the fact is that since it is something that we have no idea about, we just have seen a few reference videos. I thought it is not right to recreate it with actors, and we actually found real monks to perform in the film. These are
Oh,
real Buddhist monks who acted in the film. Everything they chanted were like real chants, real Buddhist chants. So we wanted to keep it as real as possible, and we got them on board.
here you've not got any masala commercial tropes. In the first one, you had a song and dance. Here, you've not got the faltuka comedy. You've not got the dancing and singing. Was it quite an important decision for you in terms of making sure you don't fall into the trap of making a commercial film? You know,
Mm.
as a like it must have been quite risky for you to actually do that, because I know it must have been hard to be true to the tone that you wanted to say, right?
Yeah. See, I kind of have a feeling that audience are very refined now. They're like very clear. They come to a movie with a certain mindset and they don't want us to deviate from that, expectation that they have. Anything we do away from their expectation becomes, they call it a lag. They kind of find it, slowing down the entire film. And I kind of feel audiences are very smart enough to, just enjoy a horror film as a horror film and not expect all these faltu masala as you said. So we were very clear from the beginning that let's keep it hardcore, let's keep it organic.
Sure. And I think it's kind of a very fascinating trend that I'm seeing this year in Indian cinema generally. Horror comedies and horror in particular is a genre which is obviously doing very well. Like in Hindi, we've had Munja, we've had Sri 2, we're gonna have Bhool Bhulaiya 3 soon. In Tamil, you also have Aranmanai 4. Now you've obviously had Demonte Colony too, which has done very well. Oh, what do you think is really contributing towards this sort of traction in horror in particular? Because I know in Indian cinema, horror still is a genre which I feel like, I mean, in Hindi at least, it still kind of gaining its momentum. Obviously, in Malayalam and Tamil, it's definitely had its footfalls. But what do you think has increased the audience's demand for this?
See, not just here, all over the world, horror always has a huge fan base. Like horror, there's a separate fan base for horror.
Yeah.
So I think it is because of the experience it creates. It's not a content that you can just you would enjoy watching at home or just sit and watch in an OTT. When you come along with your friends or family and sit in a theater and enjoy it with the ambience, you get a different feel of it. It is more like going for a ride than watching a movie. So I think that is where the horror clicks.
Right. And I want to talk a bit about the color schemes as well, because I remember in the first one, I mean, there was a lot of blues that you had in the
Mm.
first one. And then towards the end, we slightly see the reds coming in. And the Demonte Colony 2 essentially is predominantly red as
Yeah.
a color scheme. So for you, in terms of choosing the technical and in you employing the technical aspects of creating that atmosphere on set, uh, what really helped the actors, I think, sort of, especially when it comes to the special effects and it comes to the visual effects, what helped the actors bring out those emotions more? It must have been very difficult, I'm sure, because, VFX is almost like an unknown entity that you're working with, right? Until you see it on screen.
Yeah. See, it actually, we'll have to like inspire them to do what they're doing. We'll have to, keep them informed as to what is the gravity of the scene, what is actually happening in the scene. And the intensity it comes from what we've actually written for the scene. So they know that, every scene by scene, it is going to, like, the graph is going to keep going higher and higher. And when I actually explain to them, like, no, there's going to be so many baths here, the fish is going to come this way. It is difficult to explain, but no, they're all, I think, very professional artists who understand all these nuances, and they perform.
Hmm. Was there ever a supernatural moment on set though? When you were
No,
making this one, has there ever been a spooky experience ever?
no, not really.
Well, thank God for that. Otherwise, you'd probably have to perform a separate ritual on
The
set.
thing is, most of the days we shoot at nights, and we don't. None of us go out of the set. So because the place where we're shooting is a very isolated place away from the city. From there's a city called Hosur near Bangalore, and we actually shot in the suburbs, like almost 40-50 kilometers inside a village, and it was dark all around, and there was only our set which was lit. So none of us actually had the guts of walking out. So that's why we probably didn't encounter any spooky events or something.
And I think also it's quite interesting because you did a film called Cobra, which I actually really liked, with Vikram. I thought it was a beautiful film, and I still listen to the songs even to today. Um, and I think again we talk about, like, that whole idea of sinister presence, that whole battle between, good and evil. I mean, I know it's prevalent in every story, but I think the way you handled that, we could see a kind of aspects of horror kind of coming in Cobra, just very slightly, even if it was just very touch and go. So I think having done a big scale film like Cobra, do you think that also really, I mean, I asked you about expectations in my first question, but do you think the fact that you did a big scale film like that, that really helped you to navigate the
Mm.
canvas a lot more for Demonte Colony too, because you're kind of aware of what aspects need to go where for a commercial film to work?
Yes, see, I always believe. I kind of like films that transport audience to another world for the runtime they're giving me. So I want them to be invested in another world. So I'm always more focused on creating something that is not from something that is above usual, above ordinary. So after Cobra, yeah, probably because now that I'm exposed to like creating bigger visuals, I wanted to have a similar kind of a canvas for this film also. And because we've not seen big horror films, we've seen very relatable horror films, very organic horror films. So I thought, let's make it look like a very grand horror film. What if what does a big horror film looks like? So that was there. That the intention was there from the beginning, and that's why we chose to create a Chinese restaurant set that kind of looks posh and looks big on screen. And the events that we created, be the fish tank breaking or the bat sequence, everything we wanted to look both spooky, scary, and at the same time, look larger than life.
I really want to talk about the mirror scene here in the bathroom because I thought that sequence was absolutely mesmerizing. I mean, I've not seen that in Indian cinema, I don't think, in a film before, and I think that was really beautiful. So if you could talk us through a bit about how that scene was done and how many takes it potentially took.
Takes, I really don't remember because I think we shot it for 4 days, and it's not an easy scene to shoot because there were like three different sets we had to erect. One is a single mirror room, uh, and inside the mirror room, if you place the camera, we're going to be erasing the DOP for all the shots, and we won't be getting the details in the mirror.
Mm,
So there's this half mirror concept that we found out. So there is these half mirrors which is mirror on one side, on the other side it is transparent, and there's a certain lighting that you'll have to do to
mm,
just ensure that you get just the mirror room visuals.
mm.
So we actually created miniatures of the entire set. We placed camera, and we planned every single shot. Otherwise, it is not possible to shoot that sequence. So technically, it was a very exciting and a challenging scene for us to shoot. The idea actually, we didn't actually think of it. We needed some blocks. So you, like in the first part, it was just a small room, and we had to milk every single tool that we had inside the room for our scenes.
Right.
Similarly, when it came to the Chinese restaurant, we it's obvious that we'll have a kitchen. It's obvious we'll have a dining area. It's obvious, we'll have a terrace. Like, so all these elements we need to plan for our scenes. So for one of these scenes, we thought, okay, wow, what would we do with the restroom? There's this restroom block. So if at all we need to place some scenes there, what can we do? And that is when we cracked the two mirrors sequence. And when there are two mirrors, we're going to have infinity of reflections. What if we play around with those reflections was a idea behind it. We must have gone to these barber shops and saloons in our childhood. And when we sit, we would have had these mirrors on both sides. And no, I always had, a lot of thought process about how, no, we've always liked those reflections. So I thought, okay, why not do it in the film?
Hmm. I think the whole idea of innocence as well was very loss of innocence was very beautifully depicted. Obviously, the child who with the child is something which is very interesting in the film. I was very fascinated to see that. But it was very again a very important theme, I think, in the film, and I think even in the first one, the whole idea of loss of innocence as well. Do you think somewhere also it kind of comes from a very personal space as well, though, Ajay, when you have such tropes like you mentioned about the barbershop sort of
Mm.
reference? Do you think that, a lot of aspects were personal for you, and which aspects especially did you kind of channelize from your personal life through the film?
See, there are lots, be it the mirror room sequence, and one of my friend, I know she's been trying to have a IVF baby for a very long time, and the all that we write comes from that the stories here and there, and all the experiences that we come across. So, lot of these little things comes from what I've been traveling with. Nobody has ever cracked the exact formula of what will actually work and what will not work. But what I feel is whatever we do, be it any genre, especially horror, if it is going to be very engaging, without any dull moments, and if it's going to be engaging, I think we are almost 80% safe. The 20%, the additional success depends on the ideas if it really connects or not. But otherwise, I really don't think anybody knows the formula of to crack audience's mind all the time.
Hmm. So talk to me a bit more about the significance of this success of this film. I know we mentioned it a bit earlier, but I want to kind of follow up on that. What significance has it had on your as a filmmaker now? Do you feel like producers will be a bit more confident in you as a filmmaker, and you carrying I mean, obviously, even though you've done Cobra, but now that obviously you've had this success, do you think that kind of just cements um the producer's belief in you in giving you more big films to handle?
Think, yeah, any success is directly proportional to the confidence they actually have on us. So that is going to be there for sure. But for me personally, after Cobra, I really wanted to bounce back big time. So we, as a team, we actually took a lot of time in the writing department. We wanted to execute a very clean film, and we were actually quite confident from the beginning of the success. But the magnitude of the success is something that surprised us as well. But yeah, it's not just about the producer; it's about me gaining back my own confidence. I think that is more important than producers thing. Yeah.
And I think it's also, if we look at the trends as well, right? It's more rooted stories that I think have really done well. Like it's not just about the big sort of escapism films or the big epic films. I think this year, 2024, has literally been about films that are very rooted in culture, in history. That has really done well. I mean, even here, I think in the third part of Demonte Colony, we're going to definitely see a lot more of a backdrop behind that infamous book that was there, um and obviously the Portuguese sort of history as well, and its connection with India, which I think is very different, which you have not seen actually before. So again, for you, did you have to do a lot of research about the Portuguese integration in India as well for the third part that's coming up soon?
Yeah, we've done a lot of research about the uh, Portuguese in India, about the history of uh, around the 15th century, the kind of people that lived in Portugal, and these um, antichrist or the satanic practices that happened during that century.
Hmm.
So we've actually gone a lot deeper into this, and I think it is going to be a very exciting information in the first place when audiences watch the third part. So we are actually very excited because when I didn't write the second part alone. I wrote the second, third, and the fourth in the same time. So all of us are more excited for the third part than the second and the fourth because that is going to be a very different film. Very different film.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting as well because I watched another Pakistani series called Barzak on
Oh.
Z5 and Zindagi, which again really talks about spirituality. It talks about that whole uh you know spirits and finding that middle ground uh between present and afterlife, and I think your film really much again is on that same vein where it really addresses that. But has it made you think a lot about like what happens to us after death, what happens to us after we go, and what happens to the afterlife, because it really addresses these things in a very direct way.
The thing is, I've been working on another script, which is a science fiction script, and it is a script that deals with afterlife. But no, I never had the thought that no, I'd be doing this in an horror film. I'd be doing the same. All the research that I did for that film has no, I've brought it into this film. So I've always been fascinated about what happens after life. No, about there's a lot of stories about afterlife, be it the astral travel or the travel of a soul. So all these stories have always kept me very excited, and I was very happy to use it here. And the forthcoming parts will be how do I say? We'll be exploring those topics even more. The third part. So what actually happens to a soul when it leaves the body and all that. So it's kind of very exciting and fascinating. Yeah.
And do you know one thing that I love, Ajay, about, because I mean I'm in a phase where nowadays horror films do not, I cannot sit through horror films. I used to love them before, but especially nowadays, and I've mentioned this in another interview, where films like Long Legs, because it's so heavily negative in its energy, it's very like it's very demonic when you watch it. Like it's very makes you very uncomfortable, and
Mm.
I think that whole idea of antagonistic forces beating the divine, it really kind of disturbs me. But I think with Demonte Colony, I think the fact that you've always got that spirituality, that goodness that always wins, I think that's so important, in your films, because gods will can never be defeated. Do you know what I mean? and i'm
Yeah,
and I'm
yeah.
glad you had that. Yeah.
Yeah, see, not just that, and this franchise, we're always looking to target all the family and the kids. So we never wanted to keep it very dark. So keeping it very dark and very spooky is going to like lose out on a big audience.
Yeah.
And for example, if you come and watch, if you had watched Demonte Colony in Chennai or anywhere in Tamil Nadu, you would have seen a lot of kids flocking the theaters. So for them to enjoy a film, there's a certain level. We should not cross that level, is what we've been having in our mind from the beginning.
Mm.
So at the end of it, they need to know what is positive and what is negative. There's no point in just showing the negative and scaring them and sending them away. So
Mhm. Okay, and I know you've just given us a bit of a sneak peek of what's going to happen in the third part, but if you could also maybe highlight your expectations from the third part. I mean, it seems like it's going to be a lot more convoluted. It seems like it's going to be a lot more deeper when it
yeah.
comes to the spiritual aspect, when it comes to the supernatural dialogue, I think that we've been seeing in the other films. I mean, The Librarian looked terrifying. I think what we saw in the end part of Demonte Colony, I was absolutely horrified. Do you think I'll be even more horrified in the third part when it comes to those aspects? And also, are you looking to bring back the same actors again as well?
Yeah, as a franchise, we'll be continuing with the same actors. All these actors are going to be traveling till the fourth part. And I myself am very excited about the librarian because he's going to be terrific. Terrific is a very small word, I would say. He's going to be monstrous in the next two parts. So I myself am very excited to shoot for the librarian portions. And yeah, the as you said, the Portugal portions are also going to be a shocker.
Oh,
So
wow.
hopefully we excite the audience just as this one did.
Okay, but please don't keep it long because I'm so keen to watch the third part already. Like honestly, it left us all hanging. It was a real brilliant experience. Honestly, I absolutely loved it. And we went in watching the first, so were kind of in tune with the characters and the backdrops and Raghu's story. So it was not as if we went blind. So I think the fact that we watched the first part before we went in for the second part, it really helped because it was a beautiful context behind that, the way you've weaved it all in. It's absolutely wonderful, and I think you've created a very revolutionary franchise, I think, for the horror genre. You know, you and Maddock Films in Hindi have, working on some wonderful sort of horror stories. So I'm really looking forward to seeing the next part for sure.
Thank you, thank you. The intention was always to build a very unique horror franchise, not just we just it is easy to just use the name and make a film, but we didn't want to do that. We wanted to create a story world. We wanted to like make it unique in some way. So I think second has earned us a very little name, in that direction. Third will actually put us in a very strong position towards that goal, I guess. So we're also looking forward.
No, I'm looking forward to it. But Ajay, thank you so much for joining me. I believe this was your first UK interview that you've done.
Yeah, this is the first. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you so much for giving us that opportunity and for such a beautiful film. Honestly, it was truly terrific. And cannot wait to catch Demonte Colony 3 at a cinema near us very soon. And thank you so much and wishing you all the very best for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's great interacting with you. Thank you.
This was all ours. Thank you.